Hello, if you want to watch exclusive lemon content on What If Naruto, then go to my Boosty. The first link in the description here contains such hot stories for adults, such as What If Naruto was a daddy for Sarada, or Kushina and Mikoto Vulgar Naruto mommies. Follow the link and enjoy. I'm waiting for you.
Chapter 1: The Awakening. Naruto was running through the streets with tears in his eyes. Why would no one leave him alone? He just wanted to play at the festival, but as soon as he left his apartment, a horde of villagers chased him. Die, demon. You should have died 8 years ago. Today, we finished what the fourth started. Naruto kept running every year, chased by a mob, only to be saved by Ambu or Kageyiji. But I've never had to run so much before. Naruto runs into an alley hoping to escape the mob, but to his horror, it was a dead end. I was trapped. The crowd stopped briefly, and Naruto was wondering what they were doing when a gruff-looking man appeared. And appeared to be the one who had provoked her. He started talking, "Demon. For 8 years, you have remained unpunished and have been senselessly protected. For the Sandai Myokai, but not anymore. Today, as the Civil Council keeps the Zam off the streets, on the 8th anniversary of your defeat at the hands of Yonda and Myokai, you will finally receive your punishment." As the crowd approached, Naruto began to cry. They wouldn't save him this time. He was going to die inside the seal. Most people probably think of the Q as a fearless beast who, without a second thought, could lay waste to cities. Well, that's usually true, but there was one thing even the Q was afraid of: death. QB was scared, angry, because he was absolutely terrified. QB was immortal, but the fool of Yonda, and I tied him to his host, so when Naruto dies, he will too. He was not an angel going to heaven. No, I knew where I was going, and it wasn't a nice place. QB knew that he would reform many years later, but he didn't want to find out what it meant to spend all those years in hell, while his body reformed. QB was desperately trying to find a way to save himself, banging against the bars of the cage, trying to dig under them, and hitting them with his tail. There was no way to escape. The seal of the damn Yondaime was too strong. QB slumped to the ground, seemingly surrendered, as he felt an ancient presence deep within his being. A presence he hadn't perceived before. He immediately channeled his chakra to that point in a last attempt to save himself. If he succeeded, his host would never be the same again. Outside the seal, Naruto was in pain, so much pain as the rain of punches, kicks and kyune seemed to have no end. Suddenly, everyone stopped and remembered. A few steps proceeded, and then the man Naruto identified as the one who had stepped forward appeared with a dagger in his hand and said, "Demon, your time is over. It's time to face your punishment. Death." When the man took a step forward, Naruto began to cry again and asked out loud, "What have I done? I've never hurt anyone, really." His plea was listened to attentively as the man continued to advance. As he lowered his hand to deliver the final blow, Naruto cowered, waiting for the blow, but suddenly felt an incredible force. He held out his hands while shouting Shinra-tensei, "Almighty push." Suddenly, everything that was in the alley was thrown a long distance before falling to the ground unconscious. An hour later, a man was walking down the street back to his apartment after a night of drinking. With his team. He had long black hair, angular snake-like eyes, and pale skin. This was Orochimaru, a student of the Sandaime Okage and a member of the legendary Densatsu no Sannin. When Orochimaru has not yet betrayed the village and will not do so until the bow of Shippuden, he saw. To all the people scattered around the place, he immediately put himself on guard. When he looked around, he couldn't see what could have caused this. As he looked around, he heard what sounded like a child crying. Orochimaru immediately went to the place where he heard the boy crying to see if he saw what had happened. As he entered the alley, the first thing he noticed was his terrible appearance. Malnourished, beaten, and stabbed. Her first thought was, why would someone do this to such a young child? That's when she realized who the boy was. It was the legacy of the fourth, the Kyuubi Kitsune's Hinshiriki. Don't get him wrong, he wasn't an idiot. He knew how strong the seal was and that it was impossible for the fox to escape alone. Orochimaru was no fool. I knew that these people had probably tried to kill the young man, but since they had ended up like this, it was something I wanted to know. When he approached the boy, he saw that Naruto had stopped crying, and then said sadly, "Please don't kill me, I haven't done anything wrong." Orochimaru may not be the nicest guy in the place, but he quickly stopped, got down on one knee and said, "I don't want to hurt you. How about I take you? Let's go to the hospital and treat your wounds." Naruto said solemnly with his eyes closed. "They won't treat me in the hospital because they say they don't want patients to be exposed to a demon." At that moment, Orochimaru was stunned. He knew that there were a lot of fools in Konoha, but he didn't realize that most of the village were complete idiots. Not letting an injured young man into the hospital was outrageous. Orochimaru thought for a second and said, "Come, I have a subordinate trained as a medical ninja. He will treat you and heal you." Naruto looked at the young man and opened his eyes. Orochimaru was surprised because, instead of the intense blue he expected, it was purple with a wavy pattern. Orochimaru smiled broadly. He had only seen this taijutsu once, when he went to see Jiraiya while he was training Aime's 3 orphans. He knew what this eye could do when Jiraiya showed the children's abilities. Perhaps Orochimaru had found someone to take under his wing as an apprentice. Yes, Anko was his apprentice, but he taught him everything he could. As promised, Orochimaru took Naruto to Kabuto to heal him. Kabuto went out for a moment to get alcohol and sapropilic to disinfect Naruto's wounds. Orochimaru pushed him away. "Kabuto, I want you to take care of the child, and when you finish healing him, take him home and make sure he's safe. His eyes intrigue me, and I want to make him my apprentice to learn more about them." Kabuto opened his eyes a lot. "Are you sure, master? Considering who you are, this is a big risk. It could damage your reputation here at Konoha." Orochimaru just chuckled and said, "I don't care what those foolish villagers think of me. I am a Sannin, an icon of power." At this, Orochimaru left to investigate more about the boy's eyes. 3 days later, council chambers. "Irizen, I'm sure you understand. That thing is a threat to the village and must be eliminated," Omura said. His counterpart, Koru, decided to speak out and stated, "He attacked and injured several villagers. That brat should be exiled or executed." Suddenly, from the door, a voice said, "I wouldn't do that if I were you. And who do you think you are to break in here?" "Orochimaru," stammered Koru, surprised. "When the guy was attacked by those people you claim he attacked, he somehow unlocked a Kikgenka, and that he had only seen each other twice." The Sandaime decided to speak at that moment. "Orochimaru, what did Naruto unlock, and who were the other 2 who had it?" Orochimaru answered his sensei's question. "The eye is called Rinnegan, and it is immensely powerful. I would say even stronger than the Sharingan." The council was stunned. They had always believed that the Sharingan was the most powerful eye in existence, but here was one of their most powerful shinobi telling them that an 8-year-old boy now possessed something much more powerful. Omura stammered slowly. Who were the other 2 who also had this ability? Orochimaru smiled smugly and said, "One was an orphan from Aim, named Nagato." Unbeknownst to the rest of the council, Danzo snarled at the mention of Nagato. "And the second," Orochimaru continued, "was the legendary Rikudo Sannin." The room suddenly ran out of oxygen as the entire council gasped simultaneously. Even the Sandaime was speechless. Finally, Councillor Aruno shouted, "I thought the Rikudo Sannin was just a legend." Everyone shuddered when they heard the volume of Queen bands. Orochimaru chuckled. Only a civilian would be so naive as to believe that there is such a thing as a legend in the ninja world. All legends must have their origin somewhere, and the Rinnegan is what made the Rikudo Sannin so great. "So, you fools, don't you see?" Orochimaru continued, "If they exile or execute Naruto, they threaten to lose someone who has the potential to be the most powerful ninja there is." In response to that statement, Danzo spoke. "Irizen, let me take the kid to my ROT program. He will not only become loyal to Konoha, but he will become stronger than anyone could imagine." Faced with that, the Sandai spoke to me, "I don't dance. I won't allow it. I said no 8 years ago, and my decision hasn't changed. But we need someone to train him because surely the other villages will find out about this and will try to kidnap or kill him." "That won't be a problem, Sensei," Orochimaru said. I have decided to train him myself. Are you sure, Orochimaru? The head of the Sarutobi clan asked. I thought you wouldn't accept another student after Anko. I thought about it too, sensei, but his eyes intrigue me, and there is no other person in this village who can train him as well as I can. Except Hiraya, but he's only in the village from time to time, and he can't accept a student. And Anko didn't have the same aptitude for weapons as me, and I couldn't teach him most of my elementary jutsus because of his affinity. Different elementary, but with the Rinnegan, he can master any kind of ninjutsu. I see, the Sandaime said. I approve of making it strong, Orochimaru. Of course, sensei, Orochimaru replied. Meanwhile, with Naruto, Naruto had fallen asleep when he appeared before a giant cage in what looked like a giant sewer. He was looking around when he heard a deep growl. Naruto immediately jumped up and shouted, "Who's there?" Not even a second after he said this, two bright red eyes opened, and a dark shape with 9 tails revealed itself and calmly declared, "I am known as Kyumi." Chapter 2. An Offer of Strength. Naruto was terrified when he saw the giant fox. Despite her fear, she screamed at him. "Bullshit. The Yondai killed me, the Kyumi. It couldn't be him." At this, the demon chuckled between his teeth and said, "Foolish young mortal, no one can kill me. I am a living mass of chakra. The only way to defeat me is to seal myself. No one has the power to defeat me. Only one has lived with the ability to match my power, and he died more than 1,000 years ago." Naruto couldn't believe it. The Yondaime had not killed the Kyuubi. Although what Naruto didn't understand was why he was in the sewers, nor why the Kyuubi was trapped there. So he asked, "Why the Yonda and me sealed you in the sewers?" At this, the Kyuubi let out a guttural laugh. After finishing laughing, the Kyuubi said, "Child, this is not the sewers, it's your mind." At this, Naruto shouted at the demon, "What do you mean by my mind?" Kyuubi chuckled at the young man's antics and calmly said, "It's very simple. The Yondaime took you when you were a baby and sealed me in you." Naruto fell to his knees. Suddenly, everything made sense. The crowd, the jeers, the demon child screams. Suddenly, everything made sense and Naruto fell to the ground and started crying. "That's why everyone hates me, that's why I've always been lonely. It's because I'm a demon." The Kyuubi growled and then said, "Please, you, a demon, don't make me laugh. You're as much of a demon as I am, a harmless little kitten." This confused Naruto. "So why does everyone hate me?" he said in such a sad voice that if it had been anyone else, I would have almost cried. In response, Kyuubi grunted. "Because they are ignorant. That they even think I would try to avoid the body of an impressionable little girl is insulting. The redoubtable Kyuubi got hold of an innocent girl, yes, that will make me feel afraid," Kyuubi said sarcastically. He continued, "Just because we are demons doesn't mean we don't have honor. We demons would never dream of lowering ourselves so low. Well, maybe Shukaku does, but he's a little, how to say, touched on the head. But I, a demon with honor and strength, will not fight anyone who is not at his best, unless I am challenged to a duel. And even then I will not accept if I consider that they are not worthy." At that moment, Naruto felt the need to ask, "So why did you attack the blade 8 years ago?" For those who don't remember, Naruto just turned 8. Kyuubi suddenly had a look of rage, barely suppressed as she spoke. "I never wanted to attack your miserable village. I was forced to do it by a man to that cursed clan, the Uchiha." At this, the Kyuubi had an idea. "Kit, I have an offer for you." Naruto looked at him confused and asked, "What do you mean?" Kyuubi replied, "If you help me take revenge on the one who forced me to attack your village and live alone, I will help you train the new skills that your eyes gave you. What do you say?" At this, Naruto lowered his gaze so that a shadow covered his eyes, then his face lit up with a threatening smile as he answered, "Give me the strength, and I'll make sure it's never born." Kyuubi smiled threateningly and replied, "Very well, but you are not ready yet. Find someone to teach you the way of the shinobi. I'll know when you're ready, and I'll get back to you via a mental link. Now it's time for you to wake up. There's someone who wants to talk to you." At this, Naruto felt that he regained consciousness and left in search of a teacher. Chapter 3. A Serpent's Apprentice. When he woke up, Naruto put on the protective glasses and went out in search of a sensei, as Kyubi had told him. As he was walking, he noticed, "Where the hell am I supposed to find a sensei?" Kyubi listened to him and suggested that he check out one of the many training camps in the village. So Naruto headed to a training camp with a sign that said Training Camp 7, completely oblivious to the figure that was secretly following him. When Naruto finally arrived at the training camp, he was disappointed to find that no one was there. He was about to turn around to go back to look for a new training ground when he heard an internal voice shouting, "Kitten, move over." Hearing this, Naruto immediately jumped to the side as a huge snake slithered past right where he had been. Silently thanking Kyubi for helping him, he noticed that the snake had turned around to attack him for the second time. Silently cursing his luck, he continued to dodge it, but each time narrowly. After almost 20 minutes of dodging, he was starting to get tired. While trying to dodge it again, he tripped and fell to the ground when the snake was almost on top of him. When the snake opened its mouth to devour Naruto, a voice shouted, "That's enough, you can go home." As soon as the voice said this, the snake stopped, made something that looked like a bow, and then disappeared in smoke. Naruto got up and turned to see the man who had helped him the other day. So, as expected, Naruto shouted to him, "Hey, what a great idea it is to send that snake after me." At the boy's antics, Orochimaru chuckled. "Kukuku, forgive me Naruto-kun, I just wanted to test you to see how strong you are, and I must say for an 8-year-old. You did pretty well." At this, Naruto was confused. Try it. What did he mean by that? So he decided to ask her just that. "Hey, who are you? And what do you mean by testing me?" He looked at Naruto and chuckled. "Kukuku Naruto-kun, I'm Orochimaru, the legendary Snake Sannin, and a member of the Densatsu no Sannin. And I was testing you to see if you were worthy of being my new apprentice." Naruto couldn't believe his luck. Not only had he found a sensei, but from the way he spoke and the aura of power surrounding him, he could intuit that he was also extremely powerful. But, for safety's sake, he asked, "Hey Kyubi, do you think this guy would make a good sensei?" The Kyubi assumed that, since the boy had just entered the academy, he would not know him. He said, "Yes, he would be an excellent sensei. Few could train you better." After hearing that the Kyubi approved of this man, he spoke with his usual tone. From Naruto. "Really? Yada. I'm definitely going to be Hokage now that I have an amazing sensei." Orochimaru's forehead swelled up at the young man's antics as he thought, "I will definitely have to make an effort to make him act more like a ninja. I have a lot of work ahead of me." Giving up thinking about it, he decided to talk, and, hopefully, to have the horrible dance that Naruto had started doing. "Your training starts today, so first stop that horrible dance you're doing, much better. And secondly, start your physical work. 200 push-ups, 100 opens. Dominoes, 20 minutes of planks, 80 pull-ups, and 4 laps around the village. Then we will start with your chakra control exercises. Since you have a lot of chakra, it will be difficult, and the basics will take a while, but with your theory, by the time you graduate from the academy, you will be able to crush any people, beat or match most of the Chunin, and delay most of the Honin. Do you understand?" Naruto stood up straight like a plank and shouted, "Yes, sensei." Orochimaru chuckled to himself when he realized that making this guy his apprentice would be more entertaining than he originally was. He finally thought, "I jump in time up to 10 years. Naruto has been Orochimaru's apprentice for 2 years and has started learning about his eye powers, but he has only learned Shinra-tensei, Almighty Push, Bansatenin, Universal Attraction, how to absorb chakra, and the basics of Chibaku Tensei, Planetary Devastation, but he hasn't mastered it yet, along with several Futon Ninjutsu. Debakua, Breakthrough, Wind Air Bullets, I do not know what it is in Japanese, and Air Wall Jutsus, he has learned Shadow Snake Hands. And Evita Style and Jutsu, besides studying scroll stamps that Hiraya gives her when she is in the village." Orochimaru proudly watched Naruto finish his training for the day. He wanted to make sure he had enough energy for the surprise I had in store for him. He recalled that when Naruto discovered his Kusanagi sword, he went crazy begging for one, but Orochimaru always told him he wasn't ready. But Orochimaru had seen his strength and maturity grow in the 2 years Naruto had been learning from him. Orochimaru laughed to himself as he remembered the day he forced Naruto to get rid of his horrible orange suit. The boy flew into a rage, but in the end he relented, and now wears a black t-shirt with a red spiralite maki on the front, with a black padded leather jacket that reached to the middle of his thighs and had loose sleeves that were perfect to hide their hidden swords and their poisonous senbon launcher. Along with the jacket, he was wearing black ambu-style pants, crib covers, and on the right thigh, shuriken covers on the left. His sealing supplies on the right shoulder of the jacket, and his medicine cabinet on the left. To complete the look, she wore ambu-style armored gloves on each hand. In case you haven't noticed, black is my favorite color. Although Naruto still had a long way to go before graduating from the academy, he felt that he was ready to receive his own sword. Orochimaru called him. "Naruto, come on, I have something. I think you are ready to take the next step as my apprentice. It's time for you to receive a sword like Mecha Senagi." Naruto's eyes widened, he made a slight bow to his sensei, and said, "Sensei, I am honored that you have finally decided that I am ready." After saying this, he felt emotion invade him, and his mood changed drastically, and he began to annoy Orochimaru. "What kind of sword am I going to get, sensei? Is it one like yours? Will you have the same skills? Where is he? When will you start teaching me the katas?" Orochimaru suddenly felt a twitch in his eye, because he could have sworn that Naruto had already passed that stage of his life, but it didn't matter. It was time to take him to the Dragon Forge in the Land of Snakes. The same place where his sword, the Kusanagi, was forged. So Orochimaru calmed him down with a simple hand gesture, signaling him to stop because he needed to say something. "Getting your own sword is not as simple as me giving it to you. Above all, one as special as a sword with a quality comparable to that of Kusanagi. First, I will take you to the home of the Serpent Summons, where I will take you to the Dragon Forge. There, you will make a large cut and press it on a special stamp. This seal will record your blood and chakra, so channeling it will be much more effective than using chakra-conducting metals. In addition, being the only one capable of wielding it without suffering damage, he will have special abilities that no one could predict." Naruto was getting more and more excited with every word. He expected his sword to have some amazing ability, like disintegrating his opponents or something similar. His thoughts were interrupted when a large snake, almost as tall as an adult golden retriever, appeared in the middle of a column of smoke. The serpent said, "Lord Orochimaru, the preparations are made, you and your apprentice are ready." Orochimaru looked at the invocation and said, "Yes, invoke us in reverse so that we can start the ceremony." Then he turned to look at Naruto. "Are you ready? The birth of your weapon will not be easy, and it could happen. It will easily be a month before you regain all your strength. I was unconscious for 3 full days, and then it was another 2.5 weeks before I regained all my strength." Without missing a beat, Naruto immediately responded, "If it means getting stronger, sensei, it would pass. By any test this world can throw at me." Orochimaru chuckled at his apprentice's determination and decided to continue. "He may not give you a gun, even after the difficulties you will have to face." Anko tried to get a gun, but despite all the effort, he did not receive nothing. "Are you willing to take the risk?" Naruto responded immediately. "No risk is too great in the quest to gain power. It was one of the first things you put into my head, sensei." Orochimaru chuckled at this and said, "Have you learned well, my disciple? Now, let us go so that you can take the next step in your quest for strength." And with that, both of them went up in smoke, indicating that they had been reverse summoned. Home of the Invocations of Serpents. I don't know what it's called. Naruto and Orochimaru appeared in a field of grass that was dominated by a large mountain that if you looked closer, you could see that it was actually a volcano. Naruto looked at Orochimaru and asked, "Sensei, where is the place where I will get my sword?" Orochimaru did not immediately respond, but pointed towards the volcano before saying, "It is in the heart of the volcano. But the fires are different from those of most volcanoes. The fires it produces were originally caused by the dragons of yesteryear. It is rumored that one still exists in a chamber deep in the mountain, and he keeps the dragon forge alight with his great fire." Naruto was amazed and hadn't realized how long he had been standing there until he saw Orochimaru start walking towards the volcano, and had to jog briefly to reach it. As he neared the base of the volcano, Naruto saw the faint silhouette of a gate on the mountainside. Curious, Naruto asked, "Hey sensei, is that a door?" Orochimaru looked at Naruto and nodded, saying, "Yes, I can't go beyond this point. You should get a good-sized cut on the palm of your hand. Then, place your hand in the center of the door circle and you will enter the courtroom." This was where Anko was rejected. They analyze your blood, your character, your ancestry, and your past difficulties. If they consider you worthy, they will take you to the next room, but if you are rejected, you will be forcibly expelled. Do you want to continue? Naruto nodded, made a big cut on his palm, and placed it in the center of the circle. In a flash of light, he disappeared into the volcano. Inside the courtroom, Naruto looked around as he saw the sudden change of scenery. Now it seemed to float over a magma lake, while a dark figure, with slanted crimson eyes, she watched him. I knew that whatever it wasn't the Kyumi. She kept staring him straight in the eyes. His gaze was a little unsettling, but he continued to stare at the huge creature. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the creature spoke in a deep, gravelly voice. "You're the one." After saying this, the creature disappeared and Naruto suddenly found himself in another room. The room was huge, and he seemed to be standing on some kind of islet in the middle of a huge lava lake. Suddenly, he seemed to temporarily lose control of his body by sitting in a meditation position. Suddenly, he felt that his chakra was leaving him in large quantities and seemed to be absorbed by the magma. Along with his normal chakra, he saw Jiran's of the Q's red chakra accompanying him and being absorbed by the magma. While this was happening, some of the lava had started floating in the air and accumulating, forming a katana. Feeling the pull on the end of his chakra, Naruto saw how the lava solidified, forming an elongated katana in the traditional way. The hilt looked like 9 golden fox tails that swirled to resemble the coat of arms of the Uzumaki, and a cloth hilt that looked like solid gold. The leaf was of the most magnificent black I had ever seen. It looked impeccable, with an edge that seemed capable of cutting anything, like paper, and on each side of the blade, there was a magnificent and detailed Chinese-style dragon that looked special, to be made of the purest gold. Suddenly, he realized that he was holding in his hand a scabbard the same color as the sword, with a golden edge. The sword floated into the scabbard and sheathed itself before both reappeared strapped to his back. Suddenly, his vision darkened. But before he completely faded out, he heard a deep, deep voice saying, "I am Shinryu." Chapter 4. It's time to draw the sword. I'm bad with titles. When Naruto started to come to his senses, the first thing he noticed was a white ceiling and the smell of rubber gloves. Naruto groaned as he realized that he was at the hospital. I hated hospitals. They always forced him to stay longer than necessary. The food was terrible, and, worst of all, they didn't serve ramen. For Naruto, this was the biggest taboo in the world. Not tasting the deliciousness of the ramen was a sin that even the most merciful being was not. I could forgive. While Naruto was pondering which escape method to use, the door opened and Orochimaru entered. Without a word, he threw the Shinryu still in its holster at Naruto. Naruto slowly unsheathed the sword. He was amazed to see her perfectly balanced. He got up from the bed and brandished it a couple of times, and when he accidentally cut the railing, he was surprised to see that he felt almost no resistance. Orochimaru threw a bundle of clothes at Naruto, as he was only wearing a hospital gown. Then he got up and went outside so Naruto could get dressed. After a couple of minutes, he came back and said, "You have permission to leave. We're going to training camp 44, and you're not leaving until you've learned as much as possible about your new sword." Naruto nodded in understanding and finished placing his hidden swords and his sword behind his back. 20 minutes later in the Forest of Death, Orochimaru led Naruto to a clearing in the middle of the Forest of Death. "Naruto," Orochimaru said, "to fully master the skills of your sword, you can't just sit and meditate. To unlock the true potential of a sword, these abilities must be discovered in the middle of battle. The Forest of Death is the best place for this, as the creatures are always trying to kill you, but they are not strong enough to hurt you much. It is the perfect place for life and death combat training. You will stay here in the forest of death for a month, but if you don't master the sword skills by then, you will have to stay for another 2 months, then another 4, and so on. Naruto nodded in a sign of understanding and said, "Yes, sensei, but as I should start," Orochimaru stated, "a good way to start is to channel your chakra through the sword. Remember that this sword was created especially for you and will probably improve some of your skills. I'm leaving now. Remember that you should not leave training camp 44 until you master the skills of your sword." Naruto nodded in understanding and then jumped into the forest. 2 weeks later, Naruto was frustrated. 2 weeks later, he still hadn't learned anything about his sword, except that he could channel his wind chakra through it. And he could already do it with Kushina and other weapons, so he felt that it didn't count as an awesome special ability, as his sensei had told him. Naruto was running furiously through the trees. He was so furious that he almost did not perceive the 4 nearby chakra signals. He calculated that they should be no more than 50 meters away. He decided to investigate in the hope that it would help him learn more about his sword. Upon reaching the clearing, he saw what appeared to be Team Genin and his sensei, but also noticed that they were not from Konoha. On their foreheads, they did not wear a leaf badge, but that of the hidden village of the rock. He crouched silently on a branch above them and listened to their conversation. One of those who appeared to be Genin spoke up. "Ugh, I can't believe we've been given such a pitiful mission. I mean, what kind of mission is it to hunt down a bunch of rookie Genin for a Chunin team?" The Honen spoke. "Listen, young fool, this is a mission of great importance, and you should feel honored to have been chosen. Your job is, first, to set a trap in this forest, to make it look like Konoha is trying to get an advantage over the other villages. And second, you 3 should go and kill as many Genin from Konoha as possible, to paralyze their future forces, as there are many Konoha teams participating." The Genin just sighed and said, I know, killing a bunch of Genin sounds pretty dishonest. I mean, I always thought that our village was above such tactics, and that it was Konoha that did these things." The honey shook his head. "Listen, there is no honor in the ninja world. You are expected to do everything possible to complete a mission, even if it means killing an innocent. That is our duty as a girl. There is no turning back, because in order to survive, you must be willing to commit the most deplorable acts imaginable. Do you understand?" The Genin just turned his head, while looking disinterested, as if he had heard that same story before. At that moment, they heard a clicking sound. Up among the trees, Naruto cursed for being so careless as to let himself be heard. Without giving him much time, he found himself using his sword to block a cradle and the honey. Naruto immediately jumped back, only to duck due to a cradle and thrown by one of the Genin. Channeling wind chakra into his sword, he cut a bit used by one of Iwa's Genin and pierced through his neck. When they saw their partner fall, they decided to try a team attack. As they got closer, they noticed that Naruto had started making stamps. They were only half a meter away from him when he stretched out his hands and shouted, "Futon! Datopa!" The 2 Genin shot out and were knocked unconscious when they crashed into a tree. Naruto was looking for the young man who had disappeared. Naruto knew that the man had not run away. The Honen of Iwa were proud to be defeated by a Konoha civilian, as he is not technically a ninja yet, as he has not graduated from the academy. As expected, the Honen appeared from the ground and slammed his hands on the ground while screaming, "Doten! Morakuma Unten no Nora! Curse of the Black Mountain!" While shouting the name of the jutsu, huge spikes made of black earth rose up from the ground to impale Naruto. Naruto knew he couldn't help himself as he was too fast, so he poured all the chakra he could into his attack and screamed, "Shinra-tensei! Almighty push!" As he was saying this, a huge surge of gravity occurred, and the entire forest around him, within a radius of about half a mile, was completely leveled. Think about what pain did to Konoha, but on a smaller scale. In the midst of all this, Naruto was left panting slightly. Smiling to himself, he looked around to try to find the remains of the young man from Iwa. Hopefully, it would be his corpse. His hope was in vain when a point of dirt emerged from the ground and almost pierced his chest. He managed to make a change, but still received a flesh wound on the left side. The rock youth emerged from the earth and saw that his earth spear had pierced through a log. He looked around and thought, shit. If that attack had hit me, I would have died. Who is this guy? He looked around and was glad he had hidden on the floor. She turned just in time to block the boy's sword with a kunai, but had to jump back as she realized she was covered in wind chakra. Naruto was tired and with little chakra after his last attack. He was hoping to surprise the Honin as he did the Genin Barachinen. But he was not lucky, as he jumped back. However, Naruto was surprised when a wind chakra blade shot out of the blade, to the surprise of Naruto and the Honin. Naruto smiled as he saw her cut the Honin, but was disappointed to see a cloud of smoke, revealing a log instead. Naruto looked around to try to find the honey. While looking around, he detected a signature below him and jumped into the air, narrowly avoiding an uppercut of the honey. Channeling wind chakra into his sword again, he brandished it trying to repeat what he had done earlier in the battle. But at the last moment, he felt the chakra shift from the wind to something different, as a huge wave of fire gushed out from the tip of his sword. The honey's eyes widened in surprise as he saw the huge firestorm. Naruto smiled as he saw, as it dissipated, a pile of black debris. But before he could celebrate his victory, he saw the body crumble, indicating that it was a rock clone, and as he turned, he saw a huge rock the size of an average building coming straight at him. At that instant, he felt his Shinra-tensei returning, and he held out his sword, channeled his chakra through it, and shouted, "Shinra-tensei." When throwing his jutsu, instead of a wide-ranging attack as it used to be, it was narrow and concentrated, and upon impacting the rock, it went through it, breaking it into 1,000 pieces. The Honin's eyes widened at the attack. It was the reason why he had become a Honin, as his other abilities were only limited to high-level Honin. But that jutsu had never failed his opponents in the past. The attack came too quickly for him to dodge, and he had been so confident in his last attack that he didn't bother to prepare a substitute just in case. The attack hit him and pierced his stomach, collapsing on the floor in a pool of blood. Naruto was still standing there, staring at his sword in amazement. When his sensei told him that it would be made specifically for him and only for him, he didn't think that it would be so special as to amplify his existing abilities to such an extent. But the one thing I didn't understand was where the fire was coming from. He had an affinity with the wind, sure that in time he could control them all, but since fire is strong against the wind, Orochimaru assumed that it would be the last one he would get. Naruto decided that he should refine the abilities he had discovered so that he could do it when asked, rather than by accident. He was about to continue his training, but suddenly collapsed exhausted. And doing there, he hoped and did not expect that his sword would have much more to unlock, or at the rate he was going, he would be stuck there for a year. He was starting to miss the ramen, because he had run out of it a couple of days ago. 2.5 months later, Naruto had to stay for 3 months to master his sword. She discovered that not only the Shinra-tensei, but all of her Rinnegan abilities were enhanced by her. By approaching her or clashing swords with someone, she could drain her chakra. By using it through jutsus, he could extract the chakra of the ability. By concentrating the Shinra-tense and the Bansatenin, universal attraction, the powers were magnified and concentrated. He had learned to summon fire at will, and the best thing he thought was that he didn't need hand signals to do it. He perfected his wind attack, which he named Fujin no Wind God Sword. He also learned that if he ever lost it, he could summon it back into his will pod. Using Bansatenin, he could bring it back to his hand, and using the minor snake contract, where he cannot summon large snakes, only smaller than, like the ones used on shadow snake hands, he can make his snakes poison the sword by turning a scratch into a fatal wound. But what still intrigued Naruto was where the fire came from. He found that he could increase its size by sending wind chakra, but if it was used without the wind, it did not require chakra. This fact still puzzled Naruto. He stopped his thoughts as he approached the northernmost gate of the Forest of Death. He saw a snake curled up by the entrance. When she saw her, she knew that her sensei had summoned her to watch the door, while he was doing other important things. He probably went out drinking with Jira-Law again. Perhaps Jira-Law would give him more sealed-over scrolls, since he had just finished the last ones before entering this forest abandoned by the kami. Shaking the door a little to get the snake's attention, it looked up, slid over and through the wire fence, and opened its mouth impossibly wide, and Naruto walked in. Think about Jiraiya and the toads he was in and out of when he infiltrated a megacure. After sitting inside the snake for about 15 minutes, he saw the snake open its mouth and came out. Naruto looked around and saw that, as he predicted, the bored kunai was in the shinobi bar. In front of him, he saw Orochimaru and Jiraiya talking, while drinking a particularly strong serve. Naruto cleared his throat to get her attention. They both turned on their stools to look at him. Orochimaru looked at him and noticed that Naruto's clothes were a little torn. "Naruto, I have to improve your training if the forest creatures were enough to hurt you." Naruto looked at Orochimaru and shook his head vigorously and replied, "No sensei, I fought an Iwa Honin and 3 Chunin in the forest, who were there to try to sabotage the second round of the Chunin exams." Orochimaru and Jiraiya looked at the boy and opened their eyes wide, surprised. Jiraiya already knew that, since the war, Iwa had been forced to promote Honin to some who were not strong enough, just to maintain their appearance of strength, but still. Orochimaru looked at Naruto and asked, "What happened to the Iwa ninjas?" Naruto looked at his sensei and replied, "I decapitated one of the Chunin, knocked the other 2 unconscious, but then they died due to a Shinra-tense and empowered." Orochimaru nodded his head, knowing how lethal that technique was, and instructed him to continue. Naruto continued, "And when I was fighting the Honin, I unlocked 3 of my sword skills. First, I discovered that it is able to release a large sheet of wind that can pass through most objects. Secondly, it is able to release a huge amount of fire without requiring chakra. And it only gets bigger by channeling my wind chakra into the attack. I killed him with the 3rd skill. I can focus my Shinra-tense and threw it to cause more damage. Using the 3rd skill, I threw it to stop his final attack, but after it shattered him, it continued and tore a huge hole in his stomach. I won only by luck. If I had prevented my last attack, I would probably be dead right now." Orochimaru and Jiraiya were stunned at what this sword could do, although they both wondered how he could produce fire without chakra. Expressing his curiosity, Orochimaru asked, "Naruto, do you know how the sword creates this fire?" Naruto shook his head. "No, but I have a theory. When I use the fire, the dragons on the sides of the sword turn red, and when the fire comes out, it seems almost as if it came out of their mouths. I don't know if that helps, but that's all I've come up with." Orochimaru nodded. "I would have to talk to the snakes about it, but that would have to wait, since I needed to train Naruto right now. Naruto, to get him to use his sword properly, instead of using cradle and modified styles. Naruto, it's time for you to learn how to use your sword properly. See you at the 18th training camp tomorrow at 6. Naruto nodded in a sign of understanding, decided that he would go to Ishiraku and understood. He would make some ramen, and then come home to sleep in his own bed again. Chapter 5. The Kyumi Chakra Training Bar Academy. Naruto arrived at the training camp where he used to meet his sensei. When he arrived, he saw him standing in the clearing together with the Okage. Naruto looked at them and bowed respectfully while asking, "Sensei, why is the Okage or Hissen here?" Sarutobi decided to speak first. "Naruto, you will be attending the last year of the academy, so that you can find people with whom you can be part of a team. And you can make friends of your own age. Because right now, no active shinobi would take you seriously." Naruto looked at the window and said, "But Okusan-me." Orochimaru decided it was time to intervene in the conversation. "Naruto, even if you are able to join the shinobi force as you are, it's a matter of protocol. Besides, the advice will be put. Furious and would probably kick you out of the ranks right after being accepted. By going through the academy and passing like the other students, you make sure that the council can't kick you out of the ranks. No matter how much they dislike you, at least the civilian half." Naruto nodded, understanding. "Because I knew they didn't like me very much, and that they would be furious when he became an official ninja." Naruto looked at his sense and the old Okage and asked, When is my first day? The Sandai looked at the young ninja and said to him, in a month, you will start the academy. You are quite advanced in what they do. So please don't brag or hurt your classmates. Naruto looked at the old man and replied, don't worry, Gigi. Cheating is a child's #1 tool. I would have to be a fool dressed in orange to show everything I can do. Orochimaru looked at his apprentice with pride because he had taken the lessons seriously and was applying them to his life. Time jump 1 month later, bar the first day of the academy. Naruto was walking through the corridors on his way to the room where he had been instructed to attend. When he arrived, he knocked on the door and heard a voice telling him that he could enter. As he entered, he saw many eyes looking at him curiously. He approached the teacher and handed him the note that the Hokage had given him to give it to him. Iruka looked at the sheet of paper and nodded as he had been told. He looked up and walked towards the class. Class, we have a new student, who is joining us for the final year of the academy. At this, several shouts of protest were heard, which were immediately silenced by Iruka, who used his giant head technique. At this, the whole class fell into a sepulchral silence, and Iruka continued. He skips the first 3 years because he is apprenticed to one of our active shinobi. At this, Naruto chuckled to himself as he thought. Orochimaru-sensei is way above the average shinobi, but he didn't say anything as Iruka continued. I hope everyone treats him well and doesn't try to upset him, I understand. Yes, Iruka-sensei, the class replied. Iruka nodded and continued. Okay, now let's go to the training room to see your taijutsu skills and how they have improved over the summer. Upon arriving at the dojo, Iruka started shouting names to fight. First, a pink-haired girl named Sakura. Her first impression was that she was useless and probably a fan. And then a Yuka girl named Hinata, very shy, but who believed that she could improve a lot if she gained confidence. As she got up, the bleached-haired girl shouted, I'll beat you, Sasuke-kun. Naruto shook his head when his guess was confirmed, and the standards had dropped so low that a fan could make it this far in the academy. When the teacher told them they could start, Naruto slapped his forehead at seeing Sakura's posture, or lack thereof. His guard was so wide that Panda could get through it with room to spare, and the way he attacked his opponent was embarrassing, as he simply charged without even taking a moment to analyze his enemy. Who charges directly against a Yuga in a taijutsu battle? Naruto thought. It was no wonder that the Yuga girl, to the referral in just a few seconds. The professor proceeded to call the others until he reached the last two. Yucha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto, please take your places. After saying this, all the boys in the room shuddered, and all the girls, except Hinata, shouted at the uniso. After recovering the hearing, they took positions. Sasuke decided to provoke his opponent a little. You should give up, no one can defeat an Uchiha. 1. Naruto simply positioned himself, ignoring the arrogant comments. A moment later, Iruka. The fight started. They could hear the screams of the rabid female fans cheering on their idol. They both stood there for a moment, watching their opponent. Then Sasuke charged. Naruto could see that he was good judging by his form and speed. But he had not been trained by a Sannin. Just when Sasuke thought he was going to connect and finish with one punch, Naruto disappeared and reappeared after him, kicking him in the back and leaving him lying on the floor of the arena. Sasuke grunted as his cheerleaders praised him. He attacked Naruto again with a punch, which Naruto caught. He tried to punch with his free fist, but a knee hit him in the solar plexus, leaving him breathless and collapsing. Everyone was amazed. No one had ever beaten Sasuke before, and Naruto had done it almost without meaning to. Sasuke got up in a rage and immediately attacked Naruto again. Naruto! Iruka yelled at him to stop, but he kept going. When he arrived at Naruto, he thought he had been surprised when he suddenly found himself punching only the air. Sasuke and all his fans glared at him and started yelling at him that he had cheated or that Sasuke should have let him win. Iruka, irritated by the blatant obsession and adoration of the female fans, approached Sasuke. He grabbed him by the shoulder and said, Sasuke, tell your little group to shut up, because he won, and I assure you that he did not cheat. Sasuke taunted him and declared with his usual Uchiha-level superiority complex. Iruka sighed, but returned to the class, and they finished the taijutsu training. Meanwhile, Naruto stood by with an empty expression on his face, watching everything unfold. After Iruka made Sasuke apologize for his actions to Naruto and the rest of his classmates, they returned to the classroom for a lecture. After a couple of hours of class, they were told they could go home. Naruto went to one of the training camps to train alone, as his sensei had just left for an important mission. So it would take a while to get back. When Naruto finished his warm-up and started training to improve his swordsmanship, he realized that, since he got it, the Kyuubi had not contacted him to train more on his Rinnegan. Then he sat down and decided to meditate, which is what he did when he wanted to see Kyuubi, without the fox calling him to his subconscious. When he finally managed to get into his mind, which was unusually difficult, he walked through the various corridors until he reached the large, sewer-like prison that contained the queue. As he approached the cell, he did not see or hear anything suspicious, as the queue was not known for being shy. Since he was not stupid, he stopped a good distance from the bars of the cell and called the demon. But he got no response. So he wished that a rock the size of his palm would appear in his hand. 2. He threw it through the bars with the skill that only shinobi possess. He flew straight until he hit something and fell to the ground. Naruto then heard a growl, a very loud yawn, and a movement that seemed to be coming towards him. Naruto saw a vulpine muzzle, and then two red eyes that emerged from the darkness, and looked at him with a sleepy expression. The Kyuubi yawned again, and looked at Naruto. "Kid, you better have a good reason to wake me up, or, seal or no seal, I'll eat you." Naruto started to sweat a bit before answering. Well, it's been a while since you contacted me, so I was curious to know where you were, as I haven't heard from you for a year." Naruto was interrupted when the Kyuubi started screaming. "What? I've been asleep for a year. What could have caused it?" The great demon stopped in the middle of his speech as he remembered. "That damn sword took so much power from me by creating the one I felt. Weaker than the Ichibi. I fell asleep to regain my power. I'm at the Seven Tails level right now, but why the hell did it demand so much power?" The Kyuubi thought about it for a minute before speaking. "Did anything unusual happen while forging the sword?" "What is he doing?" asked the Kyuubi. After a brief explanation about the abilities, Kyuubi was stunned by the sword's capabilities. The sword itself was stronger than any of the swords of the seven swordsmen of the mist. The Kyuubi was stunned by the potential that the sword gave to its container. After thinking about it for a moment, he decided, "Kid, I'm going to re-establish our mental link, since the one we had lost after forging the sword, and then I'll give you some chakra. Since I think when forging it also took my chakra and was absorbed by the sword, so by using my demonic chakra, there should be some kind of reaction." After the demon finished, Naruto found himself out of his mind again. A few seconds later, he felt the demon chakra filling his spirals. His Rinnegan changed from a pale purple to a fiery red, and the small pupil in the middle became a slit, extending from the top of his eye to the bottom. His canines lengthened. His hair became even more spiky, and the marks on his whiskers thickened. He looked back and saw a chakra tail waving behind him. But he realized that he was not feeling the familiar feeling of hatred and anger that he had felt the few times before. When using the chakra, he took out his sword to see if it had reacted to his chakra. When he took it out and looked at it, he saw that the golden dragons that had been along the side had been changed to fiery red foxes, and that the entire blade was covered with the demon chakra. He decided that he should try his flaming sword attack 3 to see if anything changed. When he brandished his sword and wished for the fire wave to come out, he got more than he had thought possible. Instead of a wall of flames, there was a tsunami that completely incinerated everything in its path. He continued on his way and then scattered about 20 meters in front of him. 4. Naruto could only whistle at the destruction he caused. When he heard Kyuubi's familiar voice in his head. "How are you feeling?" Naruto replied, strangely quiet. "I don't feel the normal feelings of hatred and anger that usually come with using your chakra. I usually feel calm and serene." The Kyuubi was silent for a moment before speaking. "The sword should strengthen your body and suppress the corruption that causes my chakra. I will give you more chakra, and you will let me know when you start feeling the negative effects." As he finished his statement, Naruto felt his body filling up even more. More of a chakra. With 2 tails, he felt like hitting someone or starting a fight, but they were light and easy to suppress. With 3 tails, the momentum was higher. When he was in 3, and about to form a 4th, he mentally shouted, "Enough." He immediately felt that the chakra stopped flowing. But the 3 tails remained. 5. Very well, without any training, and already almost with 4 tails. It is something that no previous Hinchiriki can claim to have achieved. Well, for those who were even able to reach the 4 tails. But very well, even if the swords help you. It's still a great start. After his discussion with Kyubi, Naruto decided to go to bed early that day. While he wasn't that physically tired, the mental strain he had was quite big that day. And he didn't feel like doing anything strenuous that day. Time jump day. Before the graduations, the Hokage was sitting in front of his Honin to see who would face a Genin team. There were many elites in front of him, among them Kakashi of the Sharingan, Asuma Sarutobi, and Kurenai, the master of Genjutsu. He decided that everyone who was going to show up was already there, and he started the selection of teams. Just as he was about to call the first Honin to assign his equipment, a black spot burst through the open window. It stopped right in front of the Hokage and unfolded, revealing Orochimaru. The Hokage sighed and said, "Well, at least I know from whom Anko learned to make his tickets, and what happens to you, Sannin. With your tickets. It's you, with your eruptions through the windows, Jiraiya with his kabuki dance, and Tsunade with her banging on the doors. It's just that none of you can come in like normal people." He sighed. Orochimaru chuckled at his sensei's reaction to seeing the strange looks of the people in the room. So he decided to announce the reasons for his presence. Suddenly, he took a very professional stance and said, "Sensei, I would like to apply for a Genin." Say again that everyone, including the Hokage, was left quite shocked. This was due to the terrible fate that befell his last team many years ago. He had vowed never to face another Genin team again, which is why Anko was never part of one. He was only his apprentice and replaced him occasionally on missions, but he never had a team. Real. The Hokage, feeling curious about the sudden change of mind of his precious students, said, "Orochimaru, it's not that I'm not happy about your sudden change of mind about taking a team, but my curiosity demands that I ask why." The San Snake chuckled, as he was expecting this response from his former sensei, and decided to reply. "I only saw 2 genin besides my apprentice that I think could become quite powerful after an attitude adjustment." This suddenly aroused everyone's curiosity about who he was referring to. The Hokage then intervened. "Well, Orochimaru, who do you want to select for your Genin team?" After a long pause of suspense, Orochimaru finally spoke. "I would like to request Uzumaki Naruto, Yuki Sasuke, and Hinata Yuga." His request was followed by shouts of protest from the other Honin sensei, who complained about an unbalanced team, among other things, like Kulina, and that he wanted Hinata for his. The elderly leader silenced everyone and proceeded to speak. "Orochimaru, why did you choose these 3 if it's just because you like them? I can't approve it." Orochimaru chuckled and replied, "Sensei, I wouldn't choose him because of such a frivolous attitude," he said while looking at Kulina, and with his red eyes. Who knew that he would choose Hinata because of their old relationship? Then he continued, "I chose them because they would create an incredibly balanced team. Hinata, with her soft fist and devastating style, will fight him at close range. Sasuke, with his Sharingan, his Genjutsu, and the techniques he can copy, will be a formidable long to medium-range fighter, capable of hand-to-hand fighting if necessary. Added to this is Naruto, with his destructive Rinnegan, his high chakra reserves, and his already high Kijutsu skill, making him a deadly medium-ranged fighter. Combining these 3 and their selective dojutsu, they form a team that could rival the Sannin." The Hokage's eyes widened at this revelation as he realized how right his student was, and that they almost destroyed a piece of equipment he had. So much potential. The whole room was silent, with several Honin wanting to discuss Tosto's Kulina, but they could not find flaws in the logic of the Sannin. The Hokage decided that they should move on so that no one would stay all day trying to argue something to the Sannin team. And Ruzan coughed hard, attracting all eyes. "Well, it started. Now that we have a team ready, we can continue with the selection." He looked around and noticed that Kakashi had disappeared, as the one he wanted to train, Naruto, and the one he felt he needed to train, Sasuke, were already there. Busy? He probably thought he didn't need to be there anymore. The heavy smoker Asumo was the first to come out of his daze and said, "I would like to order Narashikamaru, Kimichi Choji and Yamanaka, and not for my team. It worked with their parents, why not them too?" The okay. Kaguya felt approvingly and motioned for the next one to come up. Kurena and decided to speak next and said, "I would like to have Inuzuka Kiba, Abura Mashino, and Aruno Sakura. I think a follow-up and support team will be your best option." The Okage nodded and made a gesture to call the next sensei. The next few minutes passed while the other sensei were choosing their equipment. Once the process was finished, everyone went out to prepare the training camps for the second Genin test of each selective team. The next day, all of our favorite future Genin were sitting there, all proud of themselves for passing the Genin exam the day before. And they all had their headbands tied proudly on their foreheads, biceps, belts, etc. Iruka entered the classroom and quickly silenced everyone with his giant head jutsu. He started calling the teams. Team 7 was Yukiya. At this, all the girls who had not been chosen yet, except Hinata, were sitting on the edge of their seats waiting to hear the following two results: Uzumaki Naruto. Saying this, Hinata began to silently pray to Kami to be named and placed in her crush's team. She was so busy praying with her fingers crossed that she almost didn't hear Iruka say the final name. Hinata Yuga, and you, sensei, will be Orochimaru of the Sannin. As he said this, a great outcry was heard that, in the hall, where all the fans screamed for not being placed in the team of their beloved Sasuke-kun. Meanwhile, Hinata was silently thanking the deity who had decided to listen to her pleas. Naruto was quite happy that a fan wasn't placed on the same team as him, but he didn't know too much about Hinata. Apart from that, he was quite shy and would turn quite red and stutter a lot when he tried to talk to her, which seemed a bit strange to him, and he would often ask her if she was sick and touch her forehead just so that she'll pass out. 6. Sasuke, on the other hand, was mentally cheering his. Yes, no fanatics? And since they both possess bloodlines, and even though I'm jealous of Naruto's power, at least I won't have teammates who just slow me down. And having a Sannin as a sensei and should give me enough power to defeat him. Iruka quickly regained order in his classroom and proceeded to read the names from the rest of the teams. Team 8 will consist of Inuzuka Kiba, Abura Mashino, and Aruno Sakura. Your sensei will be Kurena and Yui. Two loud bangs were heard as Kiba and Sakura's heads banged against their desks, as neither of them liked each other. Kiba disliked Sakura, as she hurt his sensitive ears and Akamaru's, and Sakura disliked Kiba, as she thinks he smells like wet dog and kibble. Iruka continued. And since Team 9 is still in circulation since last year, Team 10 consists of Narashikamaru, Akimichi Choji, and Yamanaka Ino. It has been a pleasure to show each and every one of you your new sensei, and will be here to pick you up soon. Everyone was waiting patiently while the sensei arrived to pick up their students. Then, a black object burst through the window, breaking it and landing in the middle of the classroom. It unfolded to show a man with long black hair, snake eyes, and an ungainly but agile figure. Naruto rolled his eyes when he saw his sensei from the main entrance. Orochimaru looked around and announced, "Team 7, meet me on the rooftop in 5 minutes, or you'll spend the whole month with snakes on the bed." After saying this, he dissolved into snakes, which then slithered towards the door. Naruto just rolled his eyes and disappeared into a shinsen of leaves. When Hinata and Sasuke arrived at the rooftop, they found Naruto and his new sensei sitting, silently waiting for them to appear. As he sat down, Orochimaru spoke. "Okay, let's introduce ourselves. Likes, dislikes, hobbies, dreams for the future. I'll start. I like snakes and training. I don't like bitter things or obscenities that my partner writes and practice. I like learning new jutsus. And my dream is to find a way to become immortal." "Okay, Clear Eyes, your turn." Hinata seemed a little nervous, but she answered anyway. My name is Yuga Hinata, Mgi the flowers, the cinnamon rolls and Greek." She blushed as she subtly looked at her blonde teammate, and then continued. I don't G like the caged seals in my F family, and my dream is to unite the two branches. Then Orochimaru looked at Sasuke and said, You are next, Kluka. Frowning at the nickname, he started anyway. My name is Uchiha Sasuke. I don't like many things, and I dislike many things. My hobbies are training and my dream, no. I won't call it a dream, it's rather an ambition because it will happen. I will kill a certain person and bring firm back to my clan. Orochimaru then thought about his two new students. I have an Avenger and a Shy Yuga. I hope it won't take too long for them to change their personalities. But now to listen to the presentation of my apprentices. Then he turned and nodded to his apprentice, indicating him to continue. It began. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. I like ramen, training, and my sword. I don't like people who judge others without knowing them first, and the time it takes to cook ramen. My hobbies are learning more about my lineage and swords, watering my plants, and trying new ramen flavors. 7. My dream is to become the shinobi and most powerful of the elemental nations. Orochimaru nodded in approval to his new students and then spoke. Okay, meet me at Boot Camp 7 tomorrow at 8 for your real genie exam. Everyone looked at him curiously, and then Hinata spoke. Pepero-sense, and we already took the genie EXA exam. He chuckled before saying, if you thought using such a pathetic rank ninjutsu and a written exam was all it took to become a ninja, we'd have a lot more genin deaths than we already have. Anyone could pass that exam. That test is just to find out who is absolutely useless. This upcoming test has a 66% failure rate, which means that of the 9 teams that were formed, only 3 will enter active duty. The others will be sent back to the academy for another year of training, or, if their sensei deems it appropriate, they will be completely dropped from the shinobi program. The 3 children wielding Dujutsu looked at their sensei in amazement and at Naruto in some frustration, as it was the first time he had heard such a thing. At this, the snake Sannin disappeared into a Shunsin, leaving the 3 children in conflict on the roof. Chapter 6, Survival Training. The new Team 7 is now sitting under a tree waiting for their sensei. They didn't have to wait long, as, through a cloud of smoke, their snake-shaped sensei arrived. All right, Gakus, for your genin exam, you have to steal these bells from me. Whoever doesn't get one will be tied to that pole, he pointed to 3 poles stuck into the ground, and will be sent back to the academy for another year of training. He raised 2 bells. 1. They looked at him curiously, all noticing the lack of a 3rd bell, but surprisingly it was Prince Sasuke himself, who decided to express the thoughts of the team. But sensei, there are only 2 bells, where is the 3rd one? The pale Sannin chuckled and replied. Well, it seems that I have only 2 bells. It seems that one of you will return to the academy, regardless of everything, Kyukuku. Everyone had a shocked look on their faces, but if one looked closely, one could see a twinkle in the eyes of one particular Jin. Blonde-haired, dense and spiky, who realized that he already knew the secret of this test. A few moments later, Orochimaru placed a stopwatch on a stump and then said, You have until noon to take these bells from me, while tying them to a belt in his pants. Now go away. Just a few seconds after he gave them the go-ahead to leave, they were completely out of sight. And a minor ninja would have completely lost them, but he wasn't a Sannin for nothing, as his detection skills were quite skilled. Even for not being a sensor-type shinobi, he could detect the strong chakra signal of his apprentices. By moving towards the other 2 smaller ones that were hidden, he cursed mentally as he wondered how he had deciphered the meaning so quickly. Then he cursed mentally. Damn you, Jiraiya. You should have told her the story about when we took this same test. Damn it. But I had already started the exam, and I knew I couldn't change it. But on reflection, he realized that they probably would have approved him anyway, so he let it go. But he would make sure to have some choice words with Jiraiya the next time he saw him. With Naruto, he ran through the forest looking for Hinata, who he knew would be the easiest to convince to team up. And he could only hope that the 2 of them could get through Lucia's thick skull to make her understand that the only way they were going to pass was working together. He dropped down behind her and tapped her on the shoulder just to have to avoid a juken hit, but when she saw who it was, she immediately blushed and stammered out an apology. He made a gesture with his hands in dismissal, knowing that she probably felt bad, and then said, "And Nada, we have to work together in order to pass." While saying those words, Hinata started to create a new red color on her face because of how much she was blushing. "He needs me?" she thought excitedly. While Naruto was continuing, "My godfather Hirai already had this same test when he was a genius. And he told me that the only way to pass it is by working as a team." When she heard this, Hinata got a little discouraged, but she was still happy that Naruto had come to her first. Then they ran to find Sasuke in the hope that he could overcome his big ego. They found Sasuke quickly with the help of Hinata's Yakugan. He was found hiding in a tree near a clearing where his sensei was sitting meditating. Naruto touched his shoulder, but he had to lean back at an angle that for a normal person would be impossible. When Sasuke saw who it was, he put away his crib and asked sharply, "What are you two doing here? I don't need your help to get a bell." Naruto sighed expecting this, but proceeded to tell Sasuke, "We need to work together to pass the two bells. They are a trick to divide us. This is the same test that Sensei and his teammates had when they were, and my godfather Hiroshinen told me stories of when they took the test. How they discovered the secret to pass, and it was to work as a team, and then they became famous ninjas, known for their amazing skill and teamwork." Sasuke assimilated the information and decided to weigh his chances. He came to the conclusion that his chances against a single Sannin were quite a lot. "You are scarce. Even those with a god complex admit that fighting any of the Sannin is no easy task, especially against one known to be the strongest of the three." He nodded and motioned for Naruto to continue. Naruto obeyed and said, "Well, this is what we are going to do. Do back with Orochimaru." Orochimaru was sitting in the clearing meditating, while waiting for his new students to take the first step. It had been a while, and they still hadn't done it. While most of the new teachers would get up and start looking for them, he just smiled. Knowing that taking longer, but being more efficient, is better than going fast and making a possible mistake. Orochimaru knew that even if Naruto hadn't already known what the test was about, he would have been able to solve it quite easily. But that didn't mean he was any less angry with his teammate, who was staring at him. His thoughts were interrupted when he discovered that some kume were approaching him from 3 different directions. 3 blots came out fired from different points of the forest and tried to attack him. He had to be very careful with his light-eyed student, as even a touch from him could cause him serious harm. Then he noticed Sasuke jumping back and starting to perform hand seals. Then he said, "Katen. Great fireball jutsu." As he finished pronouncing his technique, a medium-sized fireball came out of his mouth and pounced about Orochimaru. He noticed that his other 2 students had replaced the logs with explosive tags. Orochimaru realized that they had planned this maneuver and executed it perfectly, making a quick shunsen to get away from the colliding destruction balls. The 3 genin wannabes jumped from where they were standing towards each other. "Did we catch him?" Hinata asked. Naruto replied, "I seriously doubt Sensei is a Sannin. You know he wouldn't let something like that hit him, but that leaves the question. Where is he?" While he was saying that, the snakes shot out of the trees faster than they could follow them and proceeded to envelop Sasuke and Hinata, while Naruto was barely able to annihilate them with a Shinrikensei. He had just drawn his sword to free his companions when, suddenly, he noticed a flash of steel with the corner of his eye, and quickly turned and collided his swords with those of his sensei. The older and more experienced shinobi won, and Naruto had to back off. He knew that his sensei was holding back too much, or else he would be dead and would never have had time to see the gleam of his sword. He jumped up while doing hand seals, then turned and launched the attack on his 2 bound companions, screaming, "Futon! Windbreaker!" He didn't invest as much chakra as usual, but he was trying to save his friends, not turn them into cold cuts. So he only invested enough chakra to hurt the snakes and have them released, forcing them to return home. Orochimaru looked at his apprentice and smiled proudly, because he knew that he had taken his teachings, and those of all previous occasions, seriously. As he was thinking about this, he heard the timer he had set go off, while the three little children sat in front of them and asked them, "Although I guess Naruto already told you the meaning of this test, I'm going to ask anyway. Do you know what the secret is to pass the bell test?" Sasuke decided to reply, "Teamwork." He replied as he had thought more about it as they went along. The point of the bells was to separate us and try to make us compete for them, but the way to get through is to look beyond that and work together. Orochimaru smiled as he saw a change in Sasuke's behavior. He looked at his other two lineage students and saw the determination to succeed in their uniquely colored eyes. I knew that they would become a rival team and perhaps come out on top as the next three legendary ninjas. Later that day, Sasuke was returning to his compound after passing his second genie test. He was happy, and also strangely happy, with his team. When he heard that they would be assigned to teams, he thought that having teammates would only slow him down. But he realized that they were actually helping him get better. The attack plan they had come up with during the test was something I wouldn't have been able to come up with on my own. And when Orochimaru tied them to Alaya and kills them with snakes, it was Naruto who freed them. And he was surprised to realize how good it felt to know that you had trusted people there to protect you. As he approached his enclosure, a thought crossed his mind that he never thought he would get to think. Maybe they could help me deal with him. Later that day, Hinata walked shyly home, through the gates and past the branch guards. Then he approached the main building, where the clan chief and his family lived. He entered, and was about to head to the back gardens when he heard a stern voice behind him. And Hinata, her father, shouted, "Come here immediately, I must talk to you." She quietly made her way to her father's nearby office, and took a seat in one of the large, comfortable chairs that were in front of his desk for when there were important visitors. She squirmed slightly under his intense staircase until she finally spoke. "So I heard that you passed your second test, Genin, is that true?" he asked. "That one is, sir." She replied. He replied, "Well, make sure you don't do anything that could tarnish the reputation of our clan. Orochimaru is a powerful shinobi, make sure you learn well from him and Hinata. And Tusama." She replied. He nodded to her and dismissed her. She nodded and quietly left the room. With Naruto decided to return to his apartment. With nothing else to do, he returned home and made himself a quick dinner with the leftover sushi in the fridge the other day. After chatting, he went to bed early to have more energy for the next day's team training. Once he fell asleep, he found himself in front of a similar cage. Growling, he didn't want to talk to Fuchi and just wanted to rest. So she screamed, "Little ball, why did you call me? I'm trying to sleep." He saw the one who would have appeared before he spoke. "I thought you wanted to know more about your Rinnegan, but I guess I was wrong." By then, Naruto's eyes widened at this and he immediately shouted, Wait, I want to learn more." The QB chuckled before saying, "I thought you'd change your mind. As I was saying, you currently own 3 of the 6 main roads of the Rinnegan. The first one you unlocked was the Eva path, which allows you to use gravity techniques. The next one, the Animal path, which allows you to summon all kinds of creatures and animals. And the last one, the Preta path, which allows you to absorb an infinite amount of chakra. The next one I think you'll develop is called the Asura path, which allows the user to summon mechanized armor, to improve their combat performance and augment your body with extra limbs and various robotic weapons. 2. I won't reveal the others to you yet, since you're not even close to unlocking them. The last 2 are quite difficult." Naruto groaned, disappointed, wanting to know everything he could about his lineage, but he knew that the Cubino would move, since he had never done so in the past. After their talk, the QB let Naruto's mind go to the land of sleep. Chapter 7. We want a C rank. We found our heroes hidden among several trees, scattered around a clearing. They had their chakra signatures suppressed so that their target could not detect them. Suddenly, his wireless communicators were activated. "This is Rinai, I'm in position, there's no sign of the target," our favorite blonde shinobi said. "This is Tensei. I can't see you at that target either." Eris Yuga blushed as her nickname was Angel. "Rabin here, I have an image of the target requesting permission to attack," Sasuke requested. "Rabin, this is Nak. Begin your assault. Rinai and Tensei are moving to support you." Sasuke nodded at his tree and dropped down in front of the target. At the sight of the black-haired Avenger, the target shot off in the opposite direction. But before he could get away, Hinata dropped in front of them. The target was shaking, but when Sasuke approached, he suddenly attacked him by scratching him deeply in the face and quickly ran around him. The target thought he was safe when he felt a force pushing him back and saw his blonde-haired teammate with his arm outstretched towards him. Naruto caught the beast by the nape of the neck, so the little demon couldn't turn him into charcuterie meat, like he did with his jet-haired teammate's face. Suddenly, her sensei bent down and turned to the blonde. "Is that the goal?" Naruto looked intently at the feline in his hand before turning to his sensei. "Red bow on the left ear, this definitely gives." Soon after, they were in the office of the Hokage with the demon cat firmly in Naruto's hands. He was handed over to the daimyo's wife, who proceeded to hug him tightly. Everyone felt a little sorry for the abused feline, well, everyone except Sasuke, who was chuckling after seeing the cat's entrails turned into paste since he had mutilated its face. After the portly woman left, with the little demon, or rather, cat in her arms, Team 7 returned to the Hokage. He saluted, and then looked at the team, which was still there waiting for another mission. He grabbed a stack of papers from his desk and started going through them before pulling out a folder that said range of. Then he looked at the folder. Pita before turning to the young genin and Sanin in front of him. "Let's see, we have some gardening missions. An old lady needs you to take her shopping. Let's see." Suddenly, a loud crash was heard and a cry of "Tora, don't come back." Everyone in the room broke out in a sweat hearing this as Elder Hokage kept talking. "Or you can catch Tora again." Naruto, whose eye had been shaking the whole time, suddenly shouted, "No. No more homework. Those are not missions that shinobi are needed for, civilians could do those jobs, man, give us something better." Hiruzen looked at the young Uzumaki's companions, who nodded. Orochimaru sighed, as his apprentice could still be quite expressive despite all the emotional conditioning he had subjected him to. Sarutobi sighed before screaming, "You can come in now." As he was saying this, an older man came through the door. The Hokage continued, "Team 7, this is your mission. You must escort Tazuna back to his house and protect him while he finishes building his bridge." The old man, who is now revealed to be Tazuna, looked at the new squad and frowned before turning to the Hokage. "I ask for protection, and this is what I get. 3 immature children and a man who looks, well, creepy." Hiruzen was about to protest, but his face suddenly lit up as if he remembered something. "Orochimaru, I almost forgot that Jiraiya sent me a message ago. A couple of hours saying he needs your help to infiltrate a base undetected. I advise you to leave as soon as possible. I've already arranged for someone to take over your team in your absence." The Sanina snake felt and disappeared in Shunsin. Naruto, his eyes wide like plates, looked at the old man in front of him, shocked. "Which sensei isn't even going to join us on our first C-rank mission? And what do you mean by someone becoming our sensei?" "One." Suddenly, a spiky, silver-haired man poked his head out of the window. "Did you ask me, Okage-sama?" "Ah, Kakashi, I'm glad you arrived, and besides, just in time," the elder Sarutobi said for the last time, with a smile as he saw the puzzled look in her eyes. "I don't understand," Kakashi asked bewildered. "I thought I was late." Hiruzen chuckled at the puzzled look of the elite young man. "Yeah, but I knew you'd be late, so I told you to be here 2 hours ago." The silver-haired man glared at his elderly leader before turning to the young genin team, who would be undertaking a mission, and almost suffered a stroke when he saw our favorite blonde genin. "He looks like Minato-sensei," Kakashi thought too. He then dedicated his characteristic smile to the young team before returning to take his favorite orange book to his face. Everyone who knew him, including the hidden Zambu, broke a sweat at the sight of him. While the genin looked at him confused, the Okage sighed while shaking his head before turning to address the young shinobi handling Dujutsu. "This is Kakashi Itake. He will be your substitute sensei when Orochimaru is called to other missions." Kakashi gave them a small greeting and a smile in his eyes before letting Irison continue. "He will be the Honen leader in this mission." Tazuna chose that moment to open his mouth, somewhat drunk. "Wait, I ask you for protection, and you give me a scarecrow and 3 milk-drinking children." He would have kept going if it wasn't for, all of a sudden, he was caught and pinned against the wall by bond needles sticking into his clothes thanks to Naruto's bond launchers. Tazuna was sweating a little at the look the 3 young shinobi were giving her. The elderly leader sighed and inhaled his pipe deeply before talking to the young teenagers. Could the client be released? It is not good for the success of the mission if they try to kill the person they are paid to protect. The 3 companions looked down with some embarrassment before removing their pupil from the wall where he was immobilized. Then they lined up in front of the Okage, facing their sense and substitute, who had moved in front of the Okage's desk. "All right, team, meet at the door in an hour. Bring supplies for the whole week. But don't burden yourselves with too much equipment," the masked ninja said. Team 7 released a chorus from there, before disappearing to pick up their equipment from their respective homes. They met Tazuna at the gate and set off for the Land of Waves, although no one noticed how nervous Tazuna seemed as he set off. A few hours later, Naruto, Sasuke, and Hinata were discussing their Dujutsu, while Kakashi and Tazuna were walking in silence. As they watched, they saw a puddle in the distance. They looked at each other and started talking in whispers. "Do you see the puddle too?" Sasuke asked. "Yeah, but it hasn't rained in weeks." "And Hinata, can you check it with your Byakugan?" The light-eyed heiress nodded before silently activating her Kika and Genkai. He gasped when he saw 2 figures in the puddle, which seemed to be close to the level of a Chunin. After revealing the information to their male counterparts, they looked at their sense and substitute, silently asking if he saw them. Kakashi nodded slightly, letting them know that he saw them too. Everyone nodded as they prepared for an attack. Sure enough, just as they were passing the puddle, 2 figures emerged from the puddle and proceeded to wrap a spiked chain around Kakashi, while pulling it apart, shattering him. Sasuke and Naruto proceeded to throw Kuna and the duo, who caught the chain, pinning it to a tree. Before one of them could release his, Hinata appeared in front of him, unleashing a fury of Jukins that left him motionless and collapsed him. 2. Hinata immediately jumped when she saw with her Yakugan that her partner had lunged at her with one of his clawed gauntlets. Naruto jumped between them, blocking the claw with his katana. The remaining assailant tried to lash out at our blonde hero with his other claw, but suddenly he was forced to retreat when Naruto's foot hit him in the stomach. Catching his breath, he saw the last of the Genin trio, finishing some hand signals, and immediately thought, "Shit." Seeing that the Tora signal had ended, Sasuke inhaled deeply before shouting, "Katen! Great fireball jutsu!" He exhaled and a medium-sized fireball came out, although still impressive for someone so young, and crashed into the missing ninja, who flew out backwards, crashing into a tree with multiple marks of burns all over the body. He poops, and then he decided to reappear. He pulled out a spool of ninja wire and tied Ninja Kiri to a tree. As he turned around, he saw a slightly irritated Genin team. It was Naruto who spoke. "Sensei, why didn't you help us with the 2 dangerous nuclear ninjas?" The masked honey rubbed the back of his neck shyly before answering. "I wanted to see how skillful you were and how you would react in a life-or-death situation, especially since you are not my team. But I must say that I am quite impressed that I did not learn as much as I wanted, since you dispatched them so fast." The 3 Genin apparently accepted his answer and returned to their position. Kakashi then turned to Tazuna, who suddenly found his shoes fascinating. Kakashi spoke with a strong tone that reflected his status as a former Ambu captain. "Why did we encounter enemy ninjas on a mission that was supposed to be C rank?" Normally, this kind of mission's at least rank B, and if we encounter a Honin, which I suspect will happen, it might even become rank A. Tell me one good reason why we shouldn't abandon this mission and return home right now. Tazuna's eyes widened in the last part, not wanting the ninja to leave outside, and immediately began to tell a sad story about how his country did not have enough money to pay for a higher-ranking mission, and how if they left, his wife and grandson would forever blame the Leaf Ninja, and how his grandson would cry over his death. Say again that the 4 shinobi ignored him, the older one. Some of the time, not caring too much, but that didn't mean they wanted to give in. The recent events only inspired them to want to accept this mission even more, so that Naruto and Sasuke would see that they could also face a serious opponent, while Hinata was thinking about how a high-level mission. As a genin, she could make her father and her clan see her as more than just a failure. Kakashi then turned to his temporary students and asked, "Let's vote then, we will continue with this mission. If you think you are ready for it." They looked at him with only confidence and determination. Well, and Mata was a little nervous. Orochimaru was helping her with that, and she had made good progress, but she was still there. But it was Naruto who spoke. "We have to do this, sensei, if not for the old man, at least to see how far we have come in our training." His dark-rimmed eyes were oozing confidence. Kakashi nodded, looking at his other 2 companions to see if they shared his opinion, just to see them feel. He sighed, suspecting that the mission would probably escalate, but he knew he couldn't make them change their minds. So he turned and gestured to Tazuna, so that he would continue to guide them towards his home. The elderly bridge builder's eyes filled with tears, and he proceeded to thank them again and again, before finally continuing on his way to the Wave Country. Several hours later, they reached the shore, where they saw an old man waiting for them with a small boat that seemed to be used for fishing. They all got on, and the old man helped them to cross the river by boat. Upon reaching the other side, Tazuna quickly thanked the man before the fisherman walked away and disappeared into the fog. They had been walking for a while, and until then there had been no incidents. Tazuna saw this and the silence as a good sign that they would be able to survive without another incident. But the shinobi knew that this was not the case. It had been a while since they had heard any sounds of wildlife, indicating that they were probably being watched. And the fact that the fog was getting even thicker. I wasn't helping them at all. And Nada activated her Yakugan, and as she looked around, she saw a rather large signature disappear just out of her reach. Before she could get a good look at it, he communicated this information to his sensei, who nodded and whispered to him to activate his Yakugan every minute or so, in case they came back. A few minutes later, while inspecting the area, he saw something approaching. He quickly identified the object as a huge blade and shouted, "Everyone to the extreme." Everyone threw themselves on the ground. Kakashi pulled Tazuna with him to make sure he didn't lose the head, as he didn't have the same speed as the rest of them. The large blade-like blade continued to fly until it got stuck in a tree, where a masked man proceeded to jump on the large blade. He was wearing camouflage pants, he had no shirt, and a white scarf in the form of a bandana covered him to the mouth and nose. He spoke in a grave and threatening voice. Well, what have we got here?" "A few newbie genin, and the ninja impersonator Kakashi. It's a pleasant surprise, to say the least. How about you give me the bridge builder, and I don't have to kill them all?" Kakashi replied while finishing a crib, "And Zabuza, the demon of the hidden mist, why am I not surprised that you show up? But we won't give up, Tazuna-san, so I'll have to defeat you in combat myself, you murderous demon." After his statement, he and his temporary students took their own stances. Sasuke with his Uchiha interception style, and with the hand signals of his fireball technique running through his mind in preparation. And Nada fell into her improvised Hyukin that Orochimaru had helped her modify to adapt it to the natural flexibility of her body. And Naruto, in the snake style that Orochimaru had taught him. Zabuza chuckled at the bravado display of the young genin and his sensei Honey. He made some signs with his hands before announcing the Kirigakure Jutsu. As they finished pronouncing the name of the technique, a thick fog enveloped them, preventing them from seeing more 30 centimeters in any direction. And Mata immediately activated her Yakugan, which helped her. But she was surprised to find that the technique limited her range more than its absence. He quickly assumed that it was due to the chakra filling the fog, which made it difficult for him to see. But it was still better than not having it. Naruto performed several hand seals before screaming, "Futon!" Big breakthrough. The wind sprang up and pushed the fog away from them, but it was short-lived as Zabuza simply injected more chakra into the technique. And the fog returned as strong as ever. Naruto grimaced, knowing that it took more chakra to remove the fog than Zabuza to get it back. And, given the scarce chakra needed to launch the technique, especially considering the environment, I knew it wasn't worth wasting energy. I would try to remove the affected area, at least not until Zabuza exhausted her chakra. Kakashi adopted a defensive posture with his cradle, and that's it. He stretched out all his senses in the hope of hearing Zabuza's smell. Meanwhile, the genin resisted the aggression that represented the swordsman's murderous intention. While they weren't as affected as they would have been due to Orochimaru having trained them with his own Sasuke and Hinata, they were still a bit scared for not having as much training as Naruto. But they concealed it well, endured it, and maintained their defensive positions. Zabuza was slightly impressed by the young Shin. Some Chunin couldn't even stand his killer instinct, so he felt that he should try at a higher level to see if they could still keep calm. 8 places: lungs, heart, kidneys, clavicular artery, brain, throat, liver and throat. So many options, but I can only choose one for each mum. What a difficult decision. The genin shuddered a little at the words loaded with murderous intent, but still managed to stay strong and stay in his stance. Everything was silent for several moments before Hinata's eyes widened when she saw Zabuza right in front of Naruto, brandishing his sword horizontally at him. Naruto's eyes widened, and he immediately prepared his sword. The leaves collided with each other, sending out a shower of sparks. The two swordsmen clashed, but Naruto could barely resist Zabuza's strength. Luckily, it didn't last long, as Kakashi appeared behind Zabuza and stabbed him in the back with a kunai. But instead of blood, water gushed out, and Zabuza dissolved into water, revealing that he was a water clone. A shadow appeared behind Kakashi and cut him in half, only for a puddle of water to form, revealing that Kakashi was also a water clone. The real Kakashi appeared behind Zabuza and put a cradle on her throat. "It's over, Zabuza, you've lost." Zabuza chuckled before saying, "Awesome, Kakashi. Even in this fog, you were able to counter my technique, but it's still not enough for you to win." As he said that, he dissolved into water, revealing another water clone. Kakashi turned quickly, but got kicked in the stomach and flew out into the water. As soon as he landed, he felt something strange in the water. "This water is too heavy." Her eyes widened as she understood, but it was too late when she heard Zabuza scream, "Suten! Water trapping jutsu!" He was dragged into a ball of water to the condensate, where he could barely move his fingers. The young students of Orochimaru opened their eyes wide when they saw their commander Honen trapped in a water bubble. Zabuza smiled sarcastically and made a sign with his hand, and a water clone rose up in front of him and came out to the shore. The young men took up positions. Sasuke and Naruto started making hand signals before shouting, "Katen! Fireball Jutsu Futon Bar!" Big breakthrough. The two techniques combined and formed a massive firestorm that evaporated the clone and would have burned Zabuza's eyebrows if he had. Knowing that it was only a matter of time before Zabuza ran out of breath, Naruto extended his hand, before shouting out one of his favorite techniques, Shinritensei. Suddenly, Zabuza felt as if gravity began to pull him back and away from his jutsu, ending it. Indeed. Kakashi fell into the water, holding himself upright with chakra, which had become a natural for a man of his caliber. He coughed a few times before catching his breath, and proceeded to get up again and face Zabuza, who was getting up after being thrown through the air like a rag doll. Growling angrily, not knowing what forced through him, he drew his huge sword again and turned to face Kakashi. What happened next made the genin almost believe that there was a mirror or something between the two, as they were going through the same seals at the same time. before simultaneously shouting out the name of the technique. Suten. Water Dragon Jutsu. As he finished, two huge water dragons emerged from the water and collided with each other, before destabilizing and falling back into the water. Then they proceeded to do almost the same thing, but this time they shouted, Suten. Great Waterfall. While two large jets of water shot out and cancelled each other out. Zabuza's imaginary eyebrows furrowed in frustration as she thought, what is he doing? He's reading my mind. Kakashi finished the sentence for him, as Zabuza's eyes widened before frowning and screaming again. He will not be defeated. Kakashi also joined. A monolimiter. They started making hand stamps again, but Kakashi finished the first one before screaming. Suten. Jutsu of the Great Waterfall. The resulting jet of water crashed Zabuza into a tree, where Naruto and Hinata and Sasuke took advantage of his prone position and pinned him down with kunai. As Kakashi approached the fallen mist ninja, he heard him faintly scream, You can see the future." Kakashi looked down with a carefree look while taking out a crib and said, "Yes, and I predict that your future is death." But before anyone could do anything, a pair of senbon flew through the air before hitting Zabuza on his neck as he collapsed. A voice caught his attention. "Thanks, I've been tracking it for a while, but couldn't get it down. Thank you for your help," as you knelt next to the body and put your hands on it before disappearing into a Shunsin fog. Kakashi turned towards the team before falling on his face to the ground. Chapter 8. The Battle on the Bridge. The team arrived at Tazuna's house about an hour later, and, after meeting her daughter Tsunami and grandson Inari, they put Kakashi to bed in one of the extra beds. Kakashi woke up the next day, but he was still too weak to get up, so he called his temporary students who were upstairs. "There's something I need to tell you," Kakashi said to the group as they sat on chairs at the foot of his bed. "I think Zabuza is still alive." When he said that, they just looked at him with a serious look before Naruto decided to tell his sensei. "We came to that conclusion yesterday, while you were unconscious." Sasuke decided to give him more details on the subject. "After we settled in the house, we discussed everything that happened. And when we got to the part where the ninja hunter took Zabuza's body, we realized that he didn't decapitate the body first." Kakashi nodded, very impressed by his ability to look under everything else. Kakashi sat down on the bed and asked his trio of Dujutsu-wielding warriors if they all had something to train. Seeing them to feel, he lay down again to rest a little more. A couple of hours passed, and the three Orochimaru students were busy training in their respective specialties. Naruto was busy practicing his genjutsu with a clone, and Hinata was going through the series of his new soft fist style. And Sasuke was trying to learn how to subject people to a genjutsu just by eye contact. While they were training, a pair of eyes peeked out from the darkness of the forest and stared at the three ninjas in training. The stalker was suddenly lifted by a hand grabbing him by the back of the shirt. And Nari turned his head and saw Naruto's dark eyes staring at him. "What are you doing here, Gaki? This is no place for kids. You could get hurt," the blonde Hinshiriki said to the boy with emo tendencies that could rival Sasuke's right after his family was killed. The young man stared at Naruto before screaming, "What do you think you're doing? No one can beat Gato," before running to Tazuna's house. The three genin looked at each other for a second before shrugging their shoulders and returning to their training. 3 days later, the four ninjas were having dinner with Tazuna and her family. They had just returned from training. Kakashi helped Sasuke with his genjutsu, and Hinata with her strength and agility, and Naruto with his chakra control. The dinner was relatively quiet. Everyone was content to eat in silence, but that silence was soon interrupted by an enraged Inari. "Why do you keep trying? You can't beat Gato." The four shinobi looked at him with a face like you're joking. Before it was Sasuke who spoke. "Kurgato is a fat businessman. I would be surprised if he was even able to hold a sword, let alone use one." This only seemed to make Inari even angrier. "You all just talk, with your peaceful village. I doubt any of you even know what suffering is." He was suddenly silenced by the murderous intent directed towards him by the four ninjas. before finding himself slammed into the back wall by an invisible force before seeing Naruto use his powers to float over the table, and then appear right in front of him. He hit the wall with his hand just inches from Inari's head. Trembling with fear, he looked up into the angry eyes of Naruto's Rinnegan. Do we not know the pain? Did you ever run for your life on your birthday because most of the village wanted you dead? Sasuke and Hinata felt sorry for their blonde teammate for the hatred he had to endure, but Naruto wasn't done. Have you ever been forced to watch your own brother slaughter your entire clan? Sasuke clenched his fist as he remembered Itachi, but then he heard Naruto continue. Have you tried to get a foreign country to kidnap you on your birthday to become a breeder and give your lineage to their country, only to have them stop you and force your uncle to give his life for peace? And Nada cried when remembering her late uncle, which is why Neji hated her. And Nari started crying when Naruto dropped him on the floor while leaving the house. Kakashi shouted at him, Naruto, where are you going? To train. As he slammed the door shut, almost pulling it off its hinges. A few minutes later, he stopped in the middle of the forest and pulled out his katana before throwing wind blades at the surrounding trees, cutting them cleanly only for them to fall a few seconds later, to then be incinerated later by a firestorm summoned by his sword. Rising into the air thanks to his manipulation of gravity, he closed his eyes to focus them, but suddenly he slammed them open while extending his hands and shouting Shinra-tensei, which caused the formation of a huge crater that wiped out all life within a radius of 800 meters. Then, with fatigue, he let himself fall to the ground before collapsing asleep. It was the next morning when we found a feminine-looking young man walking in search of herbs to cure his master. While walking, he suddenly came across a big pile of trees that seemed as if something had pushed them all, forming a perfect circle. Thanks to his shinobi training, he easily overcame her, only to run into one of the young ninja he and his master had met the day before. She bent down, as if she was about to strangle him, but suddenly she put her hand on his chest and gently shook him, saying sweetly, "Wake up, if you sleep out here, they will kill you." Aqua opened her eyes wide when she saw the black and ringed eyes, realizing that this young ninja was just like her. Naruto shook his head as he sat up and looked at the young man kneeling in front of him. She smiled that way before she heard him speak. "What are you doing here, and what happened to the forest?" Naruto rubbed his dead man's back, sheepishly seeing what happened to the forest before replying, "Well, I'm here training. And all this was caused by one of my jutsu. I was a little angry last night, and I needed to vent a little." "What are you doing here?" Aku laughed at how he changed the subject, but moved on. "I am here looking for herbs to help my dear loved one as he is injured." Naruto nodded before speaking. "It is very honorable, protect him, because it is those who are close to us who really inspire us to give our best." Aqua felt, "That's a very good point of view. You will become very strong. I also think you do the best you can when you do it for someone close to you." Naruto nodded his head. A few hours later, Naruto returned to Tezuna's house after helping Aqua pick some herbs afterwards to destroy part of the forest. It was the next morning. 3 of the 4 ninjas were ready to go with the bridge builder. But the blonde member was still asleep from his hard training, as Kakashi wanted him to rest after using a lot chakra the day before. When they arrived at the bridge, they saw all the unconscious workers, and a dense fog covered the entire area. Tezuna looked around before screaming, "What's the matter?" A dark laugh came through as the forms of several Zabuza clones revealed themselves before his deep voice echoed through the fog. "Last chance, copycat, give me the bridge builder and you can keep your miserable life." Kakashi only laughed at the suggestion. "Do it, Sasuke." Sasuke vanished only to reappear a second later as all the clones exploded in water. Zabuza, and another figure, who turned out to be the hunter ninja, revealed themselves in the fog. Before Zabuza turned to his shortest apprentice and said, "It looks like you have a rival in speed." The fake ninja hunter only nodded in response before he and Sasuke disappeared. Kakashi turned and faced the real Zabuza, drawing Kuna, and in each hand, adopted a defensive combat style, and prepared to face Zabuza. Aku and Sasuke were a short distance away, engaged in a taijutsu fight. The snapping of limbs when colliding with rival limbs. Finally Senbin collided with Kuna, and while Aku was talking, "It seems that I have you where I want." Sasuke looked at Aku in bewilderment. How exactly is that? The surrounding air is full of water, and although you need both hands to sign, I don't. Aku finished before starting to sign with one hand. Yoden. 1,000 needles of water. Sasuke's eyes widened as Aku jumped away from him as he was attacked by the icy needles of ice. When the fog cleared, Sasuke appeared standing up and doing a very good imitation of a pig spin. Sasuke shook his head and took a deep breath as he channeled fire chakra through his body, melting the needles embedded in his flesh. He turned and faced Aku as he started performing hand seals before taking a deep breath. Katen. Fire Dragon Missile. Sasuke then exhaled a torrent of flames that took the form of a dragon and emitted a red, before exploding, consuming Aku in the explosion. Sasuke gasped a little from the powerful technique as he squinted to try to see what was left of Aku. Before the Sharingan's eyes opened at the sight of a small ice dome in the middle of the flames. The dome melted, revealing Aku there unharmed. Sasuke gritted his teeth as he finishes a second cradle and before switching both to reverse grip and preparing a defensive stance. Aku smiled under his mask while making hand signals while Sasuke tensed his body in preparation. While Aku shouted the name of his technique, Yoten. Demonic Ice Mirrors. Sasuke narrowed his eyes as he saw the mirrors surrounding him. It opened wide as he saw Aku enter the mirror and his reflection appear in all of them. Don't give up. No one who has seen my mirrors from inside is still alive. Aku spoke as he unsheathed a Senbin fist. Sasuke's only response was to squint while preparing his crib and to defend himself. Aku sighed as he jumped from mirror to mirror, throwing himself at Bon. Back at Tazuna's house, we find Naruto awakened by Tsunami's screams. He immediately grabbed Shinryu's handle and jumped out the window onto the roof, where he saw a couple of wannabe samurai dragging Tsunami down the pier. Before he could do anything, he saw Inari running after them, with a kitchen knife in his hand. He immediately replaced Inari and, using his speed, snatched Tsunami from the clutches of the thugs. The two thugs immediately turned around and saw one of the Konoha ninjas holding the woman they came to take hostage as he lowered her down, and then used his sword to deftly cut the ropes holding her down. They pointed their swords at the boy before smiling and charging at what they thought would be an easy death. Naruto apparently disappeared and appeared behind them, shaking the blood off his sword. The thugs opened their eyes wide as they fell to the ground, their chests ripped open by Orochimaru's apprentice. Naruto returned to Tazuna's house and spoke to Inari, who was standing there protecting his mother. Inari, I'm needed on the bridge. Take your mom and find a safe place to hide, okay? Inari nodded as she dragged her mother back to her house. Seeing them safe for now, he jumped into the trees towards the bridge to help his team. Back on the bridge, we found Sasuke breathing hard and with several needles all over his body. He clung to his crib and deflecting all the Zenbin he could, but they were too many. He was able to scratch the fake hunter ninja's mask with a cradle, and when his Sharingan evolved to his third Tamo. But after the ice user accelerated again, Sasuke lost sight of him. Sasuke's head jerked back when he heard Aku talking. Give up now, or I can't guarantee your survival. Sasuke stared at the Yuki clan member. I will never give up. And Uchiha never gives up, the duck-haired Avenger said. Aku sighed at his response as he raised two more fists full of Senbin and proceeded to bombard Sasuke with a new level of ferocity. Naruto was running at full speed towards the bridge. As he walked through the surrounding grove, the first thing he saw was Kakashi fighting Zabuza, but then he saw something that deeply impacted him. He saw a dome of mirrors and in the center a massive blast of Senbin hitting Sasuke's body, who fell to his knees before collapsing. Completely. Naruto's eyes widened before he screamed. Sasuke. Then something happened that no one thought possible. As if possessed, Naruto grabbed his own wrist and pulled, and instead of pulling the entire arm, A wire that seemed to carry dozens of warheads came out earlier, of shooting and creating massive explosions that destroyed all the ice mirrors and flew Aku through the clearing, covered with burns and shrapnel cuts. His mask broke, and his face was slowly exposed. When Naruto appeared in front of Aku, the last piece of his mask fell off his face. Naruto stopped in his tracks, wide-eyed as he saw who the ninja hunter was. Aku looked at the blonde wearer of the Rinnegan with eyes full of defeat, as if all the meaning of his existence had been stolen from him before he spoke. "Go ahead, let's finish me. I'm a broken tool, and Zabuza-sama." "You don't need a broken tool." Naruto's eyes widened at the words spoken by the orphan ice-wielding boy. "Don't be an Aku cow. Tools can be repaired or reforged into something new. You don't need to die." Aku's eyes closed. "You don't understand. I've been firm. Zabuza-sama won't take me back." When Aku said those words, tears welled up from his eyes because he knew that his precious person would accept him again. While they were talking, they suddenly heard a sound that sounded like 1,000 birds screaming. When they turned around, they saw Kakashi, and holding a ball of lightning in his hand, and Zabuza was being held by several dogs of various sizes. Aku's eyes widened at the sight of his teacher. He quickly pulled out some onbon and threw them at Naruto, who was forced to block them. When Naruto turned to Aku, he was gone. She turned her head to find him, only to see him emerge from a mirror just a meter away from where Kakashi was wielding his Reikiri. Kakashi had finally captured Zabuza, and had begun his attack, unstoppable by now, no matter what the latter tried. But just as she was about to make contact with him, she saw a figure jump between them. He tried to turn around to avoid the boy, but it was unnecessary, as the young man was suddenly pulled away by an invisible force. As he plunged his hand into Zabuza's heart, Zabuza coughed up blood and fell to the ground. With force. After recovering from the Bansatenin, Aku ran to Zabuza, who was dying. He cried when Zabuza turned her head and looked into his eyes. "Aku, stay alive, don't cry to me for too long, move on, but as my last request, take my sword, don't let me fade from memory. Make my legacy live on through you, make sure everyone remembers the demon of the fog while you turn into the ice demon." When he finished his prayer, Aku let the tears fall from his eyes as he knelt down beside his fallen master before his head suddenly popped up. At the sound of an annoying voice. "How have the powerful fallen? I knew he was nothing but a demon baby, and now that he's out of the way, my men can finish the job." The man speaking revealed himself to be Gato, who had brought with him an army of just under 100 armed thugs. "I'll have to take revenge on him for his failure, so maybe after I kill the rest and cut off his head for his reward, I'll have his body chopped into 100 pieces and thrown into the sea." With a maniacal smile, he was forced to take a step back when the temperature dropped several degrees. Everyone turned to see Aku stand up with the Kubikiryucho in his hands as everyone watched the frost rise up the sides of the sword. Gato appeared to freeze in place as he made eye contact with the apprentice of the man he had just slandered. It seemed that the great sword was emanating steam from it. The intense cold. Gato took a few steps back towards his personal army, while Aku ran towards the cowardly drug tycoon. When the men stood in Aku's way to protect their boss, they were mercilessly beheaded by the huge sword, brandished by the young man's lithe figure in front of them. As the crowd of hired swordsmen stepped aside, reluctant to die for the corrupt dwarf, Gato recoiled before the icy young death-bearer. As Aku's silhouette approached with his long hair waving after him, Cat was terrified at that moment. He closed his eyes hoping that the icy cold sword would end his existence, but instead of a sword, he felt a hand grabbing his head. He opened his eyes only to meet the icy eyes of Aku, who uttered a single word: "Freeze." After hearing the young man utter that one word, he realized that he could not move. A numbness ran through his entire body, frozen from the inside out. After the process, Aki hit the frozen man, causing the ice to break. Aku turned around and returned to the group of Konoha ninjas before collapsing on the ground. The whole group was stunned. With the young man, but unfortunately the thugs came out of their stupor earlier. "That brat just killed us. Now we'll have to loot the village and that girl looks gorgeous." And Mata was torn between vomiting and shaking at the thought of those people touching her. Although apparently Mata was not the only one disturbed by his words, Naruto simply extended a hand before saying in a low voice, "Shinra-tensei." All the thugs were thrown off the bridge by the invisible force of the Shinra-tensei. Just as the last thug collapsed off the unfinished back of the bridge, the entire village of Nami appeared with axes and killer whales. Inari, who was guiding them with a crossbow, looked around and saw Aku and Zabuza lying on the ground, Kakashi and Naruto tired, and Hinata healing a severely injured Sasuke. Inari rubbed the back of his head before sheepishly asking, "It's already too much late to help," only to receive an expressionless look from the entire Team 7, including the recently conscious Sasuke. The entire crowd of villagers blushed as they rubbed the back of their heads. A week later, we found our heroes crossing the bridge they helped protect during construction. Team 7 and Aku were waving to the villagers as they crossed the bridge. Inari turned to his grandfather and said, "Grandfather, we still have to name the bridge." "You're right, Inari. His name should represent hope and inspire those who see it. Let's call it the Great Naruto Bridge." The whole village applauded the suggestion of the elderly bridge builder. Chunin examinations of the six eyes of the snake. As the image fades away, we see two people named Katezu and Izumo sitting in the booth by the door. "I'm so bored, I want some action. Why is it always up to us to guard the door?" Katezu lamented. "It's not all bad, at least we don't run the risk of dying like we would in active missions. Besides, it's relaxing," the calmer one said. "It makes him lazier, and juice. Whatever. I just wish for something interesting to happen," said the spiky-haired Katezu. And if Kami had been listening, 5 people walked through the village gate. Although they were not ordinary people, the first one to cross was Sasuke Uchiha, famous for being the only survivor of the Uchiha massacre. Then came Naruto, the boy known as the apprentice of the legendary Orochimaru and bearer of the legendary Rinnegan. Next up was the heiress of the Yuga clan, who owns the all-seeing Yakugan and is the strongest woman in her class. The next one was a feminine-looking guy whom they didn't recognize, but what they did recognize was the huge sword on his back. The Kubi Kiryocho, the legendary sword of Zabuza, the demon of the bloody mist. In the midst of their fear of the huge sword, they almost faced the lazy-looking man with a honey vest and one eye covered. The famous Kakashi attack, also known as Sharingan no Kakashi. Kakashi made a gesture with his hand as they walked past the 2 eternal gatekeepers who had not yet lifted their jaws from the ground. After they left, they looked at each other before Izumo punched Katezu in the face and knocked him to the ground. Before Katezu jumped up angrily and screamed. What the hell was that for fear of? For wishing that something interesting happens, now watch what happens, just stay calm and enjoy, without doing anything for money. Katezu slumped in his chair muttering curses about lazy companions. Meanwhile, at the Okage Tower, Team 7 along with their substitute sensei, and Aku, were standing outside the large double doors, leading to the Okage's office. Kakashi shouted, "Kakashi and Team 7, ready for the little one." They heard a voice that indicated that they would enter when they saw the Okage sitting in his chair with Orochimaru leaning against the wall, with a mocking smile. The 3 Orochimaru students smiled broadly as they shouted, "Sensei." Orochimaru gave his students a smile and a small hand gesture. 30 minutes later, Team 7 finished their report, surprising both Okage and Orochimaru. He saluted and was amazed by the good performance of the team and the fact that Aku was Zabuza's apprentice and possessed the ice lineage that was believed to be exterminated. However, Orochimaru was surprised that Naruto had unlocked another path for his Rinnegan. A few minutes passed before Irisin dismissed the young Jennings, leaving him, Orochimaru and Kakashi in the room. Irisin activated the silencing seals with an expression of deadly seriousness. "Orochimaru, please reveal to Kakashi what you and Jiraiya discovered on their mission." Orochimaru's eyes took on a serious expression as he nodded. A month ago, Jiraiya's spy network attacked a new organization that was starting to grow. This organization is composed entirely of S-class criminals. Kakashi almost choked up upon hearing that information. An organization composed exclusively of S-class criminals would certainly be extremely dangerous. But what cause would attract so many people so strongly? Lead this group, as without a leader, they would surely collapse and annihilate each other. The Okage and the Sanina felt with their heads before the snake-shaped man spoke. That's the conclusion we came to, Jiraiya and I too, and the members seemed to fear and revere him as if he were some kind of god. But we don't have other information about him other than they call him Pain. Kakashi's Sharingan could almost be seen through his modified forehead protector. His eyes were so far away from his head before he pulled himself together. What do you know about any of the members? The two of them sighed before the snake summoner again. Most of them we don't know. The only ones we know are Itachi Uchiha and Kisame Asagaki. And that's because they are the ones looking for the Kyuubi. Kakashi's eyes widened even more when he found out who was attacking his sensei's legacy. Kakashi immediately thought, "There's no way I'm going to disappoint Sensei by letting his son be killed by a nuclear ninja. I will protect him until my last breath, it's a promise, Sensei." Kakashi turned around and started marching towards the door to look for Gai, because if anyone knew hardcore training, it was Gai. The two legends watched the silver-haired Honen leave the room. Orochimaru looked at Hiruzen and started using the Shunsen. Just before he left, Hiruzen told him, "Before you leave, show up tomorrow at 4 o'clock for the registration of the teams for the Chunin exam." Orochimaru nodded to his sensei as he disappeared into a swirl of leaves. Hiruzen sighed as he called his secretary to come and clean the leaves. Our three favorite genin were walking down the road to their favorite training camp when suddenly they saw a blur pass by. That looked suspiciously similar to Lokaige's grandson, Kono Amaru, and then another pink one that. It made Sasuke cringe because he was his #1 fan, Sakura Aruno. The blonde shinobi sighed, knowing that Kono probably said something stupid to piss her off, and that Sakura might accidentally hurt him and get into trouble. With the Okage, although it wouldn't be so bad when I heard Sakura yelling at someone to let Kono go. He sighed as he nodded to his teammates as they jumped the fence separating them from what was happening. Only to see Kono held by the top of his head, about to be hit by a child, who was wearing makeup and a catsuit with a Suna forehead protector. The catsuit made them pause for a second before Naruto reached out his hand and used his Bansuk Tenin to draw the young Sarutobi towards his hand. The young animal impersonator looked around, confused by what had just happened. See before Team 7 jumped in. Naruto carried the honorable grandson on his shoulder. Suna's ninja got angry that he was thwarted so easily, while the blonde behind him, wearing a purple suit and a huge fan tied to his back, blushed a lot when she saw the two jump. Wow, they must be some beautiful ones. And Nada stared at the blonde Sunanin as she saw her looking